If you run projects, and especially projects that are longer duration, then you need to deal with inflation. Typically, if you're doing any major project and the duration is 2 years plus, inflation will have an impact on your cash flows. So in this video, I want to show you a simulator that can help you look at the impact of various parameters on how you look at the effect of inflation on your project. Let's start by setting our project parameter. In this case, I'm setting the parameter to 1 billion project, which is right here. The duration of the project is 12 months. So it's set here. And there is no inflation. If there's no inflation, then what happens is if I increase the duration of the project, there is no inflation impact. If you notice, the sum of the cash flows remains the same because there is no inflation. Now, obviously, in a project of this type, there is going to be the effect of overheads, but we're not looking at that. Obviously, if you are running this project for 24 months instead of 12 months, you have more overhead. But we're ignoring this for this current simulation. Instead of zero inflation, now let's go back to our original project, it's 12 months, and dial up some inflation. So I'm going to set up inflation here to 10%. Okay. Now, what happens with 10% inflation is that you see if it's a 12-month project, the effect for a 1 billion project is going to be 45 million or 4.5%. And unlike the last time when I increased the duration of the project, nothing happened. In this scenario, if I increase the duration by 50% and take it to 18 months, you see that now the cash flow is 1 billion 70 million, 7% increase in the cost of the project. We can also simulate something that happens frequently when a project is approved. You have to prepare tender documents, maybe the designs weren't completed, the permits need to be done, a lot of upfront work, and this can lead to startup delays. So what's the effect of a startup delay? So let's say we have a 7% effect from the 6 months delay in this project. Let's take it back to our 12 months. So it's 45 million is inflation impact without any delay. But now if I add a delay of 1 month, now it's gone to 53 million. So there's an 8 million extra impact of inflation by a month of delay. In typical scenarios, you don't really get a month's delay, because if you think about the fact that you just got the charter approved, maybe you had the design documents, but the tendering process starts typically a month for preparing the tender documents and advertising it, another month for response, almost 30 days for evaluation, and then the award. So the minimum is about 3 months. So the impact is almost as if the project was delayed by 6 months. Now, so you have a 3-month delay in the start of the project, and now add that to increase in duration, and you're at 96 million, which is the total impact on this project. So it's almost like approaching what 10% of the cost. So here, if you can see the way it's been presented here, this line here shows you the nominal line, which means it's the total budget divided by number of periods. So that's this line over here. And this shows you the effect of inflation. So you're actually spending more and more money as you go further into the project. Now let's dial up the inflation, because if it's not 10%, let's go to typical construction inflation. For instance, in the last 5 years has on the average been about 18%. So the effect would be, it's 174 extra million on a 1 billion project. Can this be saved? Well, it can be saved 2 ways. One, by making sure that all the approvals, permits, designs, the tender documents, and the tender process is completely ready as soon as your project is approved. Now, If you already have a pre-qualification completed by this time, then you simply have to issue the tender documents to the pre-qualified companies, get the bids within maybe on a small project 15 days, large project maybe 30 days, and then do a quick evaluation. And you could probably save a month there. So that month is going to give you some relief. The other thing that can happen is that if you have better planning and you've selected a contractor who's really able to complete the project in time, and it's a 12-month project, so then you are basically somewhere here. Now it's 110 million. So you've saved money by having a contractor who can actually complete it in 12 months. The longer the project, the higher the impact is going to be on your project. Now, this was a simple scenario where I assumed that the cash flows are linear. In reality, cash flows might not be linear, especially for infrastructure projects. If it's highway projects, you can use the button, radio button over here in the simulators. Click on that, and this shows you a typical highway project, the cash flow for a highway project. So there's a peak, and then there's a tapering off. And it shows you the main stages. So design, mobilization, construction, it goes out. If it's a building project, then it'd be something like this. It's design, foundation, MEP, and finishing. So each one of them, for the same delay and duration, you can see that the effect on the highway project is the highest. Now let's go with the typical scenario of public sector highway projects based on studies that have been done. On the average, these projects are usually scheduled for 24 months. Let's make this a 10 billion project for 24 months. And notice that if it's a highway project, so instead of 10 billion, you're going to end up spending 12.4 billion. So 2.4 billion is the additional cost that's coming in from inflation. Studies show that the average highway project is going to take 50% more time than originally budgeted. So let's bring in that 50%. So it's 24 plus 36. So now we're at 13.7 billion. So it's a 3.7 billion additional cost that you'll incur in terms of inflation impact and the delays. And if you just add one more month of delay in the procurement because it's a complicated project, so it's almost taking it to 39% overall. How does that impact a portfolio? If you're just doing one project, then what you're looking at is making sure that you have that extra money available so that you can complete the project. But what if you have multiple projects running and you are experiencing the inflation and delays on multiple projects? What happens is that they'll basically take up the cash flows from these ongoing projects are going to extend and expand into beyond the time horizon that you were looking at, which means that the new projects that you wanted to start in that time horizon are not going to be possible. Let's say you have 40 billion and you are trying to do 4 of these projects. Now, based on this, with 40 billion, you would be struggling to complete 3 of these projects. The money that was required for the full project just been consumed by the inflation impact. So that's the impact. And the reason that I've made this simulator is that you can experiment with it. So there's a link to this in the description area. Click on it, try it out. And what I think you should be able to do from this is that you are planning a major project that's going to take 24 months. You need to really think about this idea of upfront effort into risk management, into proper scheduling, into proper resourcing, so that you don't actually get the 50% delays that you're getting over. So let's dial down the 50% delay and see what happens. So we've almost saved $1 billion by just making sure that we had better control of the project. Also, just saving 1 month delay, so that gives you another saving. So inflation by itself is unavoidable. It's something that's external to the project. But what is avoidable is the upfront delays that are frequently occurring in projects. 2 months is not unusual. In fact, most project would struggle to get started in 5 to 6 months. These are typical delays. So all the advantage that you had from reducing the delay, 50% delay, is now almost lost by the 3 month delay that you have in startup. So I think when you play around with this simulator, you realize that startup delays are very expensive. Typically, the reason that you have startup delays is that you don't have the teams that are able to schedule these projects properly. It takes time to assemble a team for something like this. It's time to look at alternates, maybe find teams that already have experience on these projects and try and retain those teams. Instead of getting PMOs and then dissolving them, make sure that you have a institutional mechanism where you preserve these PMOs and use them on different projects instead of decommission after that project. So retaining a lot of this talent, retaining a lot of knowledge that goes with projects is a possible solution. Does it pay off? Obviously, it pays off. Being how much, look at how much we could save from going. So it's instead of 2.9 billion by going to 2 months, we are 2.4 billion. So it's a 500 million saving just by saving these 3 months. And what would be the cost of a PMO that would enable this saving? Be a fraction of this, probably 500 million, 10% of this. So it's a very good ROI using these practices to make sure that you're, especially for organizations that are several projects, a large portfolio of projects. It's an absolute must. I hope you find this thing useful. Thank you.